If you're dying to try the spicy rigatoni at Carbone or the lobster caviar rolls at Corner Store, it'll probably take you months if you're lucky. But websites like Appointment Trader will get you a reservation tonight if you're willing to drop a couple $100.
Appointment Trader is the biggest name in this emerging black market of restaurant reservations where you can buy or sell lucrative bookings and they take 20 to 30% of the sale. So the more in demand a restaurant is, the more expensive it would be listed for. Like over the holidays, a couple paid $2,500 for a reservation for two at Ralph Lauren's Polo Bar, and someone recently paid $7,000 to score a table at London's 2 Michelin-starred Indian sensation Gymkhana.
And since the pandemic, for some reason, getting trendy restaurant reservations has become like literally impossible. So there are so many restaurants where people have to go online the second that reservations become available at like 6 a.m., 2 months before the exact date to even stand a chance. And it's actually so rough that booking confirmations for 4 Charles Prime Rib, which is a popular New York steakhouse, have been spotted on Hinge and Tinder profiles.
Well, even Hollywood elites are struggling to get in these days. Like Justin and Hailey Bieber were turned away from Carbone when they showed up without a reservation. So they turned to professional reservation flipper, who charges a fee of $500 to $1,000 for his help.
But if you don't have a professional reservation flipper like the rest of us, one of the only ways to secure an in-demand reservation is through platforms like Appointment Trader and Sita. So as you can imagine, they've stirred up a lot of controversy, especially from diners who are kind of saying that the world of restaurant reservations has become like a high-speed trading market.
And from restaurant owners who don't like that they're being cut out of these transactions, then that third parties are profiting from selling tables at their establishments. Like, restaurants argue that they're undermining the dining experience and can lead to empty tables because what if no one purchases the reservation and then it sits empty, as opposed to if it was just canceled and someone else could have booked it?
Then there's the whole argument that platforms like these are basically creating a second market where people are just booking reservations to sell them and then increasingly turning to bots. So elite restaurants like Le Bernardin and Raoul's in New York actually have designated staff that scope through reservations to suss out bots by looking for weird emails or disconnected phones.
Well, West Village's popular Bangkok Supper Club, which is one of the toughest reservations to nab in the city, has been subject to bots designed to check for sudden openings up to 100 times a minute. So how could normal people compete with that?
And so that's why states like New York are really cracking down on these kinds of platforms. So a first of its kind law called the Restaurant Reservation Anti-Piracy Act went into effect in February. And it basically says that third-party reservation services can't advertise, promote, or sell reservations without a written agreement with the restaurant. And violators are fined up to $1,000 per instance.
Which means Appointment Trader and other pay-to-play websites, as the governor calls them, have had to shut down operations in New York. But platforms like OpenTable and Resy, which partner with the restaurants, are not impacted.
And similar bills are being proposed in California, Florida, Illinois, and Louisiana, where the issue actually gained a lot of attention during the Super Bowl, where a customer paid more than $2,000 for a table.
So we're talking to Jonas Frey, who's the founder of Appointment Trader, to get his reaction to these bans and pushbacks to all the criticism of his platform.
An Appointment Trader is a global brand. Frey has said that the app currently performs the best in Paris. It's made $6 million on secondhand bookings in 2023. And Frey says that his mission is basically to help people get tables for a fair market price.
A criticism is that they make restaurants, especially the high-end ones, less accessible to the everyday people. What would you say to that criticism?
We're talking about restaurants like Tatiana in New York or the Polo Bar, where you just, as an everyday guy, you have no way of getting in. You just can't get in there. I think the conversation is very biased. Because it's not like because of Appointment Trader you can't go to Olive Garden anymore. We're talking about a few ultra high-end restaurants which you just could not get into anyway, and it's not like the dinner is free there. You know, we're talking about restaurants where average checks are $200-$300. These are not the restaurant where families, you know, now are unable to attain because before they were going there every Friday.
The criticism would be that it's not like Appointment Trader is necessarily making restaurant reservations available for everyone. It seems like it's still targeted towards a specific kind of person. So who would you say that the ideal user of Appointment Trader would be?
I do hear that argument a lot, but I don't see why that would be accurate. We are literally the definition of a free market, right? Somebody says, this is the Polo Bar, and I have a restaurant reservation for it. And based on historical trades, people were willing to pay $300 for that Polo Bar reservation because the demand outweighed the supply by that much that it fetches a premium of $300 for a Friday night, right? Now, for instance, Delilah Las Vegas in off season often sells for $10. Like I've purchased a $10 reservation there. Now, who is the target customer? I'd say whoever wants to go to the particular venue that's being listed, right? And we don't impose any sort of pricing. I mean, the minimum transaction price I think is $1.
You've called the New York legislation that banned third-party apps horse shit.
Okay, so this I actually love the press. I said, man, it's horseshit. I'm like, oh, don't quote me on that. And of course, now
it's the headline, yeah.
It conveys how strongly you feel. Why do you think it's such a mistake, this legislation?
If there were millions of consumers that say, shit, we can't go to restaurants anymore, this needs to be stopped, it would be a different story. But the way this legislation came about was that American Express purchased the reservation platform Resy in 2019. In 2021, they rolled out global dining access for Amex Platinum cardholders, which, by the way, has a $700 or $800 fee per year. If you're a high-end cardholder of us, you can get this special access, right? And then 3 weeks later, Resy, which is owned by American Express, publicly lobbied for that bill. And it's not that they say reservations can't be sold. It says, unless you have a deal with the restaurant, you cannot sell the reservation. And within 3 weeks, that was voted through. When you book a restaurant reservation, most restaurants make you put in a credit card, which means you're liable if you do not go. This means you are liable, meaning it's your reservation. Who the hell are they to not allow you to sell it? If you are liable for that reservation, or if you pay a prepay, $900. Now, your mom has a problem where you just can't go and you change your mind. Why, if you are liable, can you not sell that reservation? That's nuts. And that's why I said that, because it goes against anything that capitalism is, which actually is the reason for the prosperity in this country.
We're glad you brought up American Express and Resy because we wanted to ask you about that. Like, the restaurant reservation industry seems like very competitive. We know OpenTable is partnering with like Visa, and Amex obviously owns Resy and now Talk. Are you facing pushback from them?
You would be the first news outlet to finally quote me on that. It would be nice if you did. I love American Express. I love that business. I really do. They are a great company and I understand what they're doing. That being said, right now, we come from the consumer end, right? American Express has never targeted us directly. And so Resy actually has not either. OpenTable once reached out to us through their general counsel, but we never broke a law. That's why they had to create a law to make it illegal. We've had restaurant groups like Hoxall was one of them, which owns Fort Charles Prime Rib, which has sent multiple cease and desist letters to us. But we never broke a law, so there was nothing they could do about it. And the reason why Hoxall is so against it, and this is the crazy part, is Fort Charles Prime Rib has a deal with firms from Wall Street, where Wall Street firms pay large sums of money so they have tabs on restaurant reservations there.
And we know that there's other legislation being introduced around the country that kind of exactly copies the one in New York. Like, they leave a loophole for apps that partner with the restaurant. Is that something you could do?
That's not a loophole. That's the design. You got to remember, this was lobbied for by American Express and Resy, right? Now, they have partnerships with restaurants, of course. The customer of Resy is a restaurant, not the consumer. Therefore, Resy needs to cater to the restaurant, not the consumer, right? So all the interest is driven from the restaurant side. And the restaurants, they live off of appearing exclusive. The reason why they hate us so much is because we have a top list that says, hey, in the last 7 days, this restaurant was the most popular. It's not moderated. It's just user content showing you this is actually in demand. Restaurants hate that fact, just like they hated restaurant reviews that were on Yelp and TripAdvisor when they came out.
Do you see like any of the downsides for the restaurants? Like, we've heard, what if the reservation that's being sold on Appointment Trader doesn't sell and then the table sits empty?
We did 60,000 transactions or 50,000 transactions, something like that, in the last year. If we had 90% of reservations that don't sell, that would generate so many refunds and so many chargebacks that our business would implode. If you upload 10 reservations and you sell less than half of them, your account goes in a warning state. And if it goes even lower, your account's being banned. So people who just make 100 reservations trying to sell them, they won't even be able to upload them to Appointment Trader because it blocks them at 10, right? And then as you become successful, your limits go up. And the top seller, like last year, the top seller made $360,000. Our no-show rate is less than 1%, because we track that right when people upload it. The industry no-show rate's 20%. Or sometimes 30. Makes sense. People pay money for a reservation, so they're more apt to go.
We know that bots like are a huge problem in like the restaurant industry, so it's like weird that there isn't like legislation targeting that. How does your platform, make sure that there aren't any bots?
People that create reservations with bots have very high cancellation rates. Thus, they have high refund rates on appointment order. You can't stop it, right? You get people that sign up and then they try to do that. Within the first few uploads, their account gets banned because the reservations get canceled. There is literally an act that's called the Bots Act. These legislations say, oh, bots are this big problem in restaurant reservations. And there is a law that's called the Bots Act for tickets. You could have easily just amended it to reservations. That's why I said it's horseshit, because if you really dig into it and you look at everything, is that they say bots are the problem, but they're not targeting bots. People always pretend as if all the laws that are being created are made for consumers. Most laws are created because a lobbyist that's paid by a company lobbied for something. We're the biggest player in the market. We connect consumers, and we always make sure that we don't hurt market participants.